Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 22nd of August of 2023. Today we have updates, so let's start. And you know that before we start, I would like to give you my opinion about the situation about today. I believe that most of you have mentioned that today we got a lot of geolocations, a lot of videos, a lot of updates, a lot of piece of news regarding the situation in Ukraine. But everybody, I believe, had a feeling that something goes wrong, or at least that even if there are so many updates, we don't see the real actions on the ground or something like this. So we had the feeling that both sides, either the Russians and the Ukrainians, took a decision to make a small operational pause, probably in the combat line. We haven't received a lot of videos regarding the battles of Robotyne, about the storming operation, about destroyed tanks. We haven't received nothing almost from the Vremivka tactical bridgehead. We haven't received even a single update regarding Kupiansk, about the battle of Sinkovka, or many other things. And we might have a feeling that the front lines stopped, but it's not true. Of course, we understand that there are very fierce clashes all over the front line, all over the combat line. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation gave us update, but the thing is that we see that both sides, either the Russians and the Ukrainians, took a decision to reduce, let's call it, the noise from the combat line because of the most important update of today, and we're talking about the summit BRICS in the South Africa. We have already updated the map showing the comrade Xi visiting the country. The president of South Africa, Ramaphosa, met the leader of China. Also, as we know, the Prime Minister of India, Modi, also have already arrived in India. Furthermore, the president of Brazil, also Lula da Silva, have entered the territory of South Africa. So as we can see, the gang is very interesting, and they're currently the most powerful people from the world. When talking about Russia, as you know, Vladimir Putin is not going to visit. He's not going to enter the South Africa. Probably there are some issues, some legal issues, legal aspects regarding the warranty of the Netherlands and so on. I don't think that the president of the authorities of South Africa will arrest Putin, but even if Putin take a decision to go to the south, he will have to cross a lot of countries, a lot of governments, and there are a very high risk of some, let's say, events and actions that can go not under the plan. So probably this is the reason why Vladimir Putin took a decision not to go to the South Africa, and he will be replaced by the Minister of the Foreign Affairs, Sergei Lavrov. And currently, as of the 22nd of August, this is the most important event. And this is the reason why the Russians and the Ukrainians took a decision to reduce the pressure, to reduce the noise from the combat line. We understand that. I believe that if Zelensky makes some trick like destroying Crimea bridge or destroying another Russian ship in the Black Sea, or bombing settlements all over the Russia, would create a very bad media atmosphere regarding the BRICS, because this event should be the most important, and currently nobody has the right to change the media focus from this event. Of course, we understand that the United States of America and the Western countries maybe and probably will try to reduce the media atmosphere, the media noise of this event, and probably will try to force Zelensky to do something. And basically, for example, during the previous 24 hours, Zelensky made an attempt to break that day, to break that holiday, let's call it even a very holiday of summit of BRICS. Zelensky tried to send his infantry, his marine, to the gas station that located in the middle of the Black Sea, with the purpose probably to establish the Ukrainian flag. As you know, today is the holiday of the Russian flag. It's a national holiday of Russian Federation, and during the day people celebrate this holiday. Putin gave his own speech, and Zelensky wanted during the holiday flag of Russia to establish Ukrainian flag, basically on the territory of Russian Federation and in the Black Sea above the gas stations. And for these purposes, the Ukrainians sent at least 3 boats. They were moving from the Snake Island. The Ukrainians, this is their direction. They were moving south somewhere in this area, but the Russians managed to discover the Ukrainian forces and to stop the boats. The Russians sent Su-30 aircrafts, and the Su-30 managed to destroy those boats, and the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation published a video with a very low quality, and the author, the Russians are saying, claims that this video shows the results of attack of Su-30 against the Ukrainian boats. As a result of that attack, the boats were destroyed. The Russians, the official position is that there were two boats, the two boats were involved in during the previous 24 hours in the operation of the Black Sea, but the Russian military expert Riber reports that there were at least 3 boats. So anyway, probably when talking about Ukraine and when talking about the entire situation, the combat lines, this is the most interesting event of the past day. Now let's start from the ground and let's talk about events that took place. And first we're going to start with Kherson. The Russians reported that as a result of artillery duels, the Ukrainians lost another 15 soldiers. We haven't received nothing since the morning video, no more updates, so we will bypass and continue further, and we'll go into Robotyne. When talking about Robotyne, of course, the clashes in this area continues. The Ukrainians continue their assault operation in the settlement. They are sending endless waves of infantry to the south, trying to capture and trying to force the Russians to step back. The Ukrainians are entering the settlement along the main road from the north. The Ukrainians try to enter the settlement from the east. Of course, the Ukrainians probably have already secured the roads between these two attack directions, and currently there are already tanks in the settlement. There are already armored vehicles like Bradley, probably there are strikers, there are infantry, endless number of infantry, and the Ukrainians during the day at least published few videos how they managed to force the Russians to accumulate their forces just on the southern edge of the settlement. Later we understood and found out that that was a Russian trick to step back as far as possible to the south to stretch the Ukrainian forces, and after that the Russians started bombing and shelling the settlement with artilleries, with aircrafts, with guided bombs, and so on. And that was some kind of ambush. I'm not saying that Ukrainians didn't understand this entire situation. During those attacks, of course, they have possibilities to hide themselves among the buildings, among the basements of this almost ruined settlement. But anyway, very interesting episode that we need to pay attention to is the clashes that took place, let's say, on the southern edge of the settlement. There were at least 2 videos from this area. The first one is how the Ukrainian Bradley were attacking the Russians in the south, and also there was a video. We will not watch this video because there are Ukrainian soldiers who have landed from the Bradley and got their positions along the road and were attacking the Russians from machine guns, from the snipers' rifles, and so on. And another interesting video from the same area, and the Russians first claimed that this video show us that the Russian drone Lancet strike and destroy the Czech tank M555. But later the Ukrainian sources told us that that was the Lancet strike against the Russian T-90 tank. So, and the question is what did happen and so on. And after that we got another explanation from the Russian side that during the day the Russians managed to, after they bombed and reduced till ruins the northern fortifications in the Ukrainian positions in the north and the central part, the Russians sent their reinforcements to the settlement and started counterattacking inside the settlement with the tanks and with the armored vehicles and so on. And that counterattack allowed the Russians to force the Ukrainians to step back from the central part to the north, and basically the Ukrainians were almost forced to leave the settlement. After that, the Ukrainians started bombing and shelling this area, and somehow the Ukrainians managed to damage the Russian T-90 tank in this area, and the Russians took a decision to leave the tank, just to drop it on the road and evacuate their personnel, the tank driver, somewhere in direction of the more reliable positions. And after that, the Russians realized and understood that there are no chances to evacuate the tank because of damage, and as I understand, the Russians also realized that there were very high chances that the Ukrainians Ukrainians had possibility to evacuate the tank, and of course it's not the thing that the Russians want to allow the Ukrainians to do, to evacuate the modern, the most powerful tank in the world, T-90. So this is the reason the Russians took a decision to destroy the tank by their own Lancet strike. And basically in this video we see the attempt of the Russian forces to destroy the tank and not to allow the Ukrainians to get this vehicle under their control, and the most important probably to get technologies of this tank. Anyway, currently we yet don't know the real information, the real situation in the settlement, and according to the last update we have from the Russian side, the Ukrainians were forced to step back to the northern edge of the settlement, and the Russians managed to restore control over the southern and at least over the southwestern part of the same settlement. Furthermore, today the Ukrainians during the day made lots of attempts to send more reserves in direction of Robotyne. The Russians control the roads, every single road is under fire control. It's not a very big problem to start attacking this or that area, just the Russians need just a command. And for example, in this video we see how the Ukrainians were trying to send some reinforcement, but the personal carrier was destroyed as a result probably of artillery strike or as a result of KA-52 helicopter strike. Today the main job was made, probably the most important force on the ground was KA-52. Today we got a lot of videos from the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation, from different Russian military experts about more attempts and more strikes from KA-52 against the Ukrainian armored vehicles. On this video we see how the Russians destroyed another armored vehicle, and some sources were saying that on this video we could see the destroy of Striker. This situation took place at night, so it's very difficult to understand whether it's true or not. Also, there were a lot of drone strikes along the front line in this area. The Russians were attacking the trenches, the strongholds, trying to suppress and trying to pin down the Ukrainian forces on the flanks of, let's call it, Robotyne defense operation. So that was the situation in the vicinity of Robotyne. The Ukrainians from their side, as you can see according to the map, tried to suppress and to attack the Russian forces, and there were at least two very interesting videos from the Ukrainian side. The first event took place somewhere in the vicinity of Verbova. The Ukrainians were using their newly created drone. This is Ukrainian technology. This is an attempt from the Ukrainian side to create something like Orlan 10, Orlan 10, the Russian drone that can fly on a very long distance and a very long height, very big height. And on this video we see how the Ukrainian drone were making intelligence reconnaissance operation and was coordinating the Ukrainian artillery to attack the Russian positions. The most important from this video is the quality of the video, and just the quality of the video. So take a look at the picture. And later we got another update from Tokmak, and on this video we see the same squad, Ukrainian drone squad, the same picture. So probably the Ukrainians do have some possibilities to control this entire area, to establish 100% control with drone. The Ukrainians have the picture, and on this video we see how the Ukrainians discovered the Russian position somewhere in the industrial zone on the south of Tokmak, and after that, probably as a result of HIMARS attack, they destroyed the accumulation of Russian forces. The interesting thing from this video is the distance that Ukrainians can use for a reconnaissance operation. If we calculate, let's say, the distance from Orekhov to Tokmak, so basically the Ukrainian drones are able to get deep inside of more than 40 kilometers. Of course, this is a very big number, this is a very big area to control, and probably this is some kind of problem for the Russians. They need to find a solution how to suppress these drones, or at least how to shut them down. But currently the Russians yet haven't managed to do this, because since the beginning of the Battle of Robotyne, this is new type of drone, and we yet haven't received any video or photo confirmation from the Russian side that they were able to shut this type of drone down. The Russians reported that as a result of fierce clashes for Robotyne, the Ukrainians lost around 125 soldiers, 14 armored vehicles, and the most important, 11 artillery systems. The Russians destroyed 2 M777 howitzers, 3 M109 howitzer, one Krab, one Caesar, and one British howitzer FH-70. And the Russians noted about successful counter-artillery duels during the previous 24 hours. This was probably the most important achievement from their side. And there was a video of destroyed another Ukrainian ammo depot on the north. And we have discussed this video already in the previous time, but one more time, we see the strike, and I wonder what type of rocket or bomb or missile the Russians were using for these purposes. Very powerful attack and very accurate attack, and probably that was a Kinjal, maybe Iskander or something like this. Now we're moving further to the Vremivka tactical bridgehead. If you take a look at this area, you're gonna see that there are almost no updates from the Ukrainian side. There is no drone strikes, no bombings or something like this. And this is very important because the Ukrainians are trying to continue their regrouping in this area, trying to bring more forces, more infantry to the combat line. The Russians are bombing this area heavily. They're doing some very powerful, very successful counter-artillery duels. They're not allowing the Ukrainians to accumulate their forces on the combat line. And the absence of geolocated videos from the Ukrainian side makes me think that something is wrong in this area. Maybe they're trying to regroup, to accumulate forces, to get the critical mass before the next waves of attacks. Who knows? And now they're trying just to hide their position and to discover the Russian position. Who knows? But also from the other side, we understand that there is a BRICS pause on the combat line, and maybe there are very fierce clashes, but because of BRICS, neither the Russians nor the Ukrainians provide us the real updates from the combat lines. The Russians reported that as a result of clashes in this area, the Ukrainians lost 240 soldiers, 2 armored vehicles, and 2 artillery systems. Some Ukrainian source, some Russian sources and Ukrainian sources reported about some attempts of Ukrainian side to attack in direction of Mykolskaya. This is not the first attempt from the Ukrainian side. Probably that was reconnaissance in combat or reconnaissance in force. We haven't received any photo or video confirmations of that attack, just one video from the Ukrainians, how they were bombing and attacking Mykolaiv with the drones. Just a regular routine from the drone forces to discover and to attack the accumulation of enemy's forces. When talking about Novomikhailivka, the Russians continue offensive operations storming this area, but currently they're just on the stage of bombing and attacking this area with the drones, with the artilleries. Maybe the Russians are not planning to make a very fast attack because they do have some problems with the manpower. They have lack of forces in this area, and they need to be very careful, and they need to work very slow, step by step, just with one purpose: not to waste the infantry and storming squads in unnecessary and stupid offensive operation, like let's say in the same offensive operation like Ukrainians tried to implement on Bradley Square. And when talking about Krasnogorovka, probably this is the first day when we haven't received even a single video from this bridgehead. Just one Lancet strike in the vicinity of Izmailovka. The Russians managed to discover the Ukrainian M777 howitzer, and as a result of Lancet strike, that howitzer was destroyed. And also the not just howitzer, but also the local ammo depot with the rounds for that artillery system. When talking about Artyomovsk, also the same story, almost nothing from this bridgehead, just an interesting video from the Russian side. In front, the Russians were hiding in the building, and they were recording the forest that located on the west of the settlement, and we're using this video just for geolocations and for the confirmation of position either of the Russians and the Ukrainians. The Russians control the settlement, the Ukrainians controls the forest on the west of the settlement. The Russians also continue bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions along the combat line, trying not to allow them to accumulate their forces, trying to reduce their fortifications, their strongholds, the ex-Russian strongholds in this area, but without any attempts from both sides to attack each other. Probably there are some reconnaissance operations, but without real success or changes on the ground. The same story in the vicinity of Zalizniansk on the northern flank. Few attacks in direction of Russian positions, one from Makiivka in direction of Zalizniansk. There was probably one reconnaissance and force attack that were repelled by the Russians. and few attacks along the railways in direction of Aghidna, also just reconnaissance in combat or something like this. The Russians reported that as a result of fierce clashes in this area, the Ukrainians lost 235 soldiers, 7 armored vehicles, and 4 artillery systems. And one more time, when talking about this area, the same as the area in the vicinity of Zaporozhye, no matter the situation on the ground, no matter the BRICS, the KA helicopters, KA-52 helicopters, always in the sky, always try to hunt and to destroy the Ukrainian armored vehicles. Currently, of course, there are a lot of artillery systems, Lancet and so on, but probably the most effective and the most powerful weapon against any type of armored vehicles that Ukrainians can use and will use during the special military operation is KA-52 with their Vikhr missiles or Lemur missiles that helicopters can use within a distance from 10 till 15 kilometers, basically be invisible for the Ukrainian air defense. No matter the weather, KA-52 always is the final defense belt of the Russian forces on any front line. Now we are moving further to the Liman front line. As you can see, we haven't received even a single video or photo geolocation from this area, which means about reduce of activity, or one more time the BRICS pause or something like this, and tomorrow or maybe even this night we start to receive something. But as I understand, until the end of the BRICS we're not going to receive anything, because I believe neither the Russians nor the Ukrainians want to break this event. This is currently the most important event, and nobody can break this media situation in the world. Only the Western countries, like United States of America or United Kingdom, I believe that they want to do something and to break and to change the focus of people of the world from this event to something else. Probably they have some plan, and maybe we will see something. The Russians reported that as a result of fierce fightings on the Liman front line, the Ukrainians lost 50 soldiers and 3 armored vehicles. When talking about the Kupiansk front line, the story of Sinkovka continues, but before that we have a video from the Ukrainian side, how they were bombing the Russian ammo depots on the Karamzinovka bridgehead, which confirms the Russian position, the Russian control over this bridgehead. When talking about Velika Novoselovka, the clashes in the vicinity of Novoselovska continues. The Ukrainians tried to force the Russians to step back, and no matter the reports of Ministry of Defense that they're advancing in this area, currently the situation is not so good and easy as the Ministry of Defense reports. The Ukrainians counterattacks and they tried to force the Russians to step back. Also today we got another confirmation of the fall of Sinkovka from a very reliable Russian source. This information is still unconfirmed. We haven't received a video or photo confirmations from the Ministry of Defense, but probably, and there is a very high chances that we haven't received these confirmations also because of BRICS summit, because a lot of people and who follow political situation, politics, who tries to Elon Musk probably a few months ago published a tweet that when girl sleeps, all boys follows the situation in Bakhmut. So the same situation, when girl sleeps, we follow the situation in Sinkovka. I believe that there are millions of people, of man or woman, who controls the situation, and basically just the entire situation is not to break the media atmosphere about, around, and regarding the BRICS. So that's why maybe even if the Russians have already established control over the settlement, we will get this update only after the BRICS summit ends, not during, not before, only after. The only update, so we got some update regarding the settlement from the local sources. Also, the Russians published the photo of destroyed bridge, pontoon bridge, and the just bridge over Oskol River that the Ukrainians were using to support and supply their forces on, let's say, on the eastern bank of the Oskol River. And the Russians also published the video how they were bombing and shelling the Ukrainian forces in the forest line somewhere between Sinkovka, Pershetneravnyevo, Avalshany, which confirms that probably all these fields are under Russian control. At least the geolocation I've just provided you shows and confirms that at least these fields are still under Ukrainian control, or at least are in the gray zone. Before the next video, we will update this part of the front line, and we will color this at least or in the gray zone or with a yellow color. There are still clashes along the borderline between Kharkiv and Belgorod, but mainly the artillery duels. The Russians published another geolocated video how they managed to discover the Ukrainian positions along the front line, along the border, and as a result of artillery strikes, they managed to destroy another Ukrainian stronghold. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.